The film opens in a scientific facility in China. A Yeti escapes from his holding cell and proceeds to run from the building. A massive search is launched once Dr. Zara raises the alarm. Once outside, he hums, which triggers his powers that allow him to burst through the gate and run into the city. The Yeti manages to find a place to hide, but he becomes sad when he sees a billboard for Mount Everest. Teenager Yi lives with her mother and her Nai. It has been a while since Yi's father passed, and she hasn't been as close to her mom or Nai because of it. She takes on several odd jobs like dog walking, babysitting, garbage removal, to save up money to take a trip across China that she wanted to take with her dad. She passes by her childhood friend Jin, who is socializing with a group of girls and friends. As she heads back into her apartment, Jin's younger cousin, Peng, tries to get Yi to join him in playing basketball. She told him that she had been busy working all day and needed to rest. Yi tries sneaking past her mother and grandmother, who lament Yi's sociability since her father's death. When her mother asks Yi to play the violin after dinner, Yi blurts out a lie about selling it. Yi reaches her rooftop hideaway, looks through her savings and plans of traveling across China that her father had planned for the family. She starts playing the violin looking over the city, but a helicopter searching for the Yeti comes by and knocks Yi off her feet, causing the boat to slide to where the Yeti is resting. Yi freaks out when she sees him, but when she sees that he is scared and injured, she realizes that he is not harmful. Rashly, she decides to hide the Yeti. The next morning, Yi sees he's wounded. She uses some of her money to buy medical supplies. After gaining the Yeti's trust, and it indicates familiarity with the billboard of Mount Everest, Yi realizes that he wants to go home to his mountain. Yi decides to name him Everest. Later, Yi brings her violin out to play some music for Everest. He hums again, causing his magic to bring a wilted flower back to life. Meanwhile, Burnish tries to put the pressure on Dr. Zara and his head of security to find the Yeti as soon as possible in time for a scientific conference. Back at Yi's apartment, her grandmother Nai and Peng notice that their air conditioning unit is being stolen and pulled up to the roof. Yi, who reaches it first, tries to get the Yeti to drop it, and as she's doing so, Jin and Peng reach the roof and misunderstand the situation into thinking a monster was trying to eat Yi. Jin immediately calls the police, which Zara and the mercs overhear on the scanner. Soon, the mercs fly toward the roof and spot Everest. He panics and kidnaps Yi. Jin and Peng immediately make to follow on the ground. Yi and Everest make it to the top of another building with the mercs cornering them, but they are saved by the building's lights going off as they do every night. This gives Yi and Everest a chance to make it to the docks, where Everest hops on a boat to go back home. Seeing how frightened he is, Yi hops on the boat to join him. Peng runs after them and is caught by Everest, while Jin reluctantly joins to protect Peng. On the barge, Jin calls his mother in the morning and tells her that he, Peng, and Yi are visiting his university of choice in Beijing. The gang end up in a crate of sodas as the boat stops at an island. Their crate gets on a truck, but they all fall off of it after Peng and Everest get too hopped up on soda. This leads to them having to walk to the mountain to get Everest home. Jin complains because he is hungry, and Everest hums again to cause some blueberries to grow. However, they start to grow to humongous sizes before they start flying and hitting the kids as they try to run away. They end up resting for the night, with Yi noticing that Peng and Everest get along so well because Everest is basically a child who misses his family. Jin makes an unintentionally insensitive comment about Yi becoming distant from her mom and Nai after her father passed, which upsets her. When they're finally at rest, Jin's plans are to return to the docks. However, Yi points out traveling in the woods in the dark is a bad idea, so Jin grudgingly follows Yi's example of settling down for the night. In the morning, after watching Yi play on her violin for Everest, Jin agrees to go with them to the Zai River, one of the landmarks that will lead to the Himalaya Mountains. Burnish, Zara, the captain, and the other mercs make it to the island, and they follow the trail of soda cans until they have a lead as to where they may find Everest. Burnish, not having stepped out of the comfort of his home and company for so long, begins to admire nature. The gang starts making their way further, only for Burnish's drones to spot them. Everest causes a dandelion to grow big enough to float them away, but Jin fails to jump after them and plans to meet the others in a village by the river. Jin is found by Burnish and his team, with no other choice, and convinced well enough that Zara and Burnish won't really harm them, he tells them of the town they're planning on meeting at. Yi, Everest, and Peng land their dandelion in the desert. They stop to rest again, but Yi feels that this whole mess is her fault. They then notice fish swimming upstream in the river, and he tells Peng that these fish don't give up, and so they don't have to give up either. They proceed to keep moving. Jin can't sleep and he begins to walk outside. He overhears Zara talking to the captain. She drops her British accent and reveals that she never cared to bring Everest home safely, but rather to profit off of his existence, and she doesn't care if she has to hurt the children to get him back. Jin tries to steal a motorcycle, but it rides off a cliff from under him. He ends up walking and going through treacherous terrain until he finally finds a vendor that gives him a boat in exchange for his phone. On their way, the other three find small village. Yi and Peng try to sneak Everest through the crowd with the other yaks, but Burnish and his team have spotted them. Jin arrives in time to get Yi on the boat, while Peng causes the yaks to stampede and create a diversion. He and Everest join Yi and Jin, but the captain turns car to the ship, and they chase after the heroes, so Everest removes the boat engine and hums to send the boat sailing further. They hit the land, but Everest's magic causes the field of flowers to create a tidal wave that pushes them to safety. Even Burnish is amazed at this power. The gang crashes their boat on another island. Yi's violin is broken, and she runs into the forest. Jin follows her and asks if she is okay. She expresses her whole problem with her father's passing and her distance from her mom and Nai. Yi even admits that she hasn't cried over her dad's death yet. When they get back to Peng and Everest, they find that the two helped fix Yi's violin by using Everest's hair as strings, giving the violin magic powers. The group continues their travels, and when they reach the awe-inspiring Buddha statue, Yi realizes that all the places they've traveled are to those postcard images her father left behind for her. It turns out the path they've been taking has been deliberate on Everest's part. Yi pulls out her violin and plays a song, unknowingly calling forth magic rain clouds whose every drop of water causes flowers to bloom where they fell. The statues and their surroundings become covered in beautiful white flowers. At a bridge that would reach the Himalayas, the gang is surrounded by Burnish's men. Everest climbs to the top of one of the bridge's towers and calls forth a lightning storm. Burnish, breathless and amazed, flashes back to the first time he saw a Yeti. He recalls the fear and then the realization he had when he saw the Yeti was protecting its children. Burnish understands that Everest is only trying to protect the other children and makes to call off his guards and tells Zara that they have to bring Everest in safely. Instead, Zara tells the captain to tranquilize Burnish. She then has the other mercs tranquilize Everest, causing him to fall to the bridge. Zara tries to use a cattle prod on him, but he attempts to fight her off. Zara ends up pushing Yi over the bridge, which Jin and Peng witness as Zara takes them. Yi holds onto a rope on the bridge. She pulls herself back up to the top and grabs her violin. She plays it to use the magic to revive Everest. He bursts out of the cage, stopping the mercs in their path. Yi runs over there as Everest frees Jin, Peng, and Burnish. He uses his powers to create large icicles that scare off the mercenaries. However, Zara and the captain are now determined to take Everest in dead. She rams the van into Everest, hitting the side of a mountain. This causes an avalanche that sends Zara and the captain falling to their deaths. Everest is unharmed. Burnish tells Everest that he is an amazing creature, which is why the world must never know that he exists. He proposes to take the kids home, but Yi says she promised to bring Everest home first. Everest uses his magic to create flying cloud creatures that guide everyone to the mountain. There, they find enormous Yetis that are Everest's family. He runs into their arms, and his parents respectfully nod to Yi in gratitude. Burnish takes the kids home. He runs to hug her mom and Nai. They later have dinner together, with Jin and Peng coming over. Peng brings in a box left to them from Burnish with equipment for their next adventure. They then sit to have Nai's pork buns, which Peng claims to love more than anyone. Yi says she knows someone else who loved them just as much. As the family eats, the last thing we hear is Everest humming. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.